Hi, this is Shauna. Before we get to today's guest, I want to take a minute to learn more about you, the listener. We've put together a short survey at fueltalent.com/podcast to gather information on who's listening and to give you a chance to make suggestions and comments about the show. I want What Fuels You to be a great resource for you and your interests, and I hope these interviews give you practical advice along with inspiration for your career and life. Help us continue to serve you better by going to fueltalent.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Now let's start today's show. Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Justin Hayashi. Justin is the CEO and co-founder of Engen, a born digital, tech-fueled, people-powered, and growth-obsessed integrated marketing agency. Justin started Engen in 2016 and has been fortunate enough to work alongside an exceptional team that has built the business to 230 employees and over 120 reputable brands, including General Mills, ViacomCBS, Google, Figs, and more. Prior to Engen, Justin was at Zulily, building attribution models to evaluate advertising effectiveness, designing customer LTV predictions, and leading the customer acquisition marketing teams for both digital and offline advertising. Earlier in his career, Justin worked at Boeing and in economic development for the Sonoma County government. Outside of work, Justin spends as much free time as possible with his wife and 20-month-old daughter. Welcome, Justin. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Shauna. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that this is happening. This is the one I've been super looking forward to. I'm going to hit you first with some rapid fire. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so Seattle guy, I know you're from here. So are you water or mountains if you had to go on vacation?
Water, by far, yeah.
Nice. So beach or lake? I got to push it a little further.
Beach, yeah. Lakes are cold. At least that's my understanding. When I think of beach, I think of Hawaii. When I think of lakes, yes. I think Washington.
Yes.
I'd rather be in the oceans of surrounding Hawaii than Lake Washington, where it's freezing.
I'm with you. With you. What's the best music that you like to work out to?
Hip hop.
God, I'm loving you right now. I'm beach and hip hop too. Is there a quote that you would say that you kind of live by or that you think about?
Quote. The one, I don't know if I live by this, but it comes immediately to mind is the stereotypical Yoda one, or the cliche Yoda one, do or do not, there is no try. That one's really stuck with me for some time, and it's also kind of cute because Yoda's adorable. So
do or do not, there is no try. I like this. I'm going to say this one to my kids. They need to hear this one a lot. I know you've just got a 20-month-old, but with teenagers, you might want to put this one up on the wall.
Yeah, I'm my 20-month-old is starting to turn into the terrible two slowly.
Yes. Sure. But, so get ahead of it. Get ahead of it. Is there a habit that you are currently trying to break?
A habit that I'm trying to break. Yeah, I mean, the basic health ones. So there's a couple that come to mind. One is going to sleep at a reasonable hour. I think, there's a lot of more acceptance out there about people that are naturally late risers. And I think I'm definitely that. My circadian rhythm, at least this is how I justify to myself, my circadian rhythm hits, I think, a little bit later in the day. And so I get kind of like a second wind at 8:30, 9 p.m. But I still have to work, early morning schedules. We have team members that are East Coast. And so I hope to be kind of better about going to sleep earlier. I think that would be my priority.
Yeah, that's smart. I got to stop watching TV at night because I'm the same as you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Is there something that you have read or listened to or watched over the past year that you would recommend?
Gosh.
With a 20-month-old, maybe not.
Yeah, no. So TV and shows have the pandemic's actually helped. I used to get a lot of crap from my colleagues and friends about how I didn't know anything about pop culture or TV shows or what's out there. And And then, spending all our time at home has opened me up to a little bit more on that front. But yeah, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I've been kind of going through a tear on like Patrick Lencioni books, who does like very short, easy to read or easy to listen to kind of business lessons and he kind of gives those lessons through anecdotes about specific businesses or operators of businesses or employees at various companies. And so there's like 3 or 4 that come to mind under that, but they're all really good. So,
I just wrote that one down because I'm obsessed with Audible, but I've been listening only to like musicians do like autobiographies, like, which is really amazing. I just listen to Will Smith and like Alicia Keys.
That's on my list too. Will Smith.
They're really, really good and they're fun because they kind of sing in there too. But I like little nuggets for business inspiration. And so I wrote this one down. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, this is like the perfect parlay into, I guess, your leadership style. What would be 3 words used to describe your leadership style?
3 words. Yeah. So one, this isn't words, they're more descriptions. I'm kind of cheating here, but I think empathy. So that is a word. So I think that's one that I think is really important for leadership in general. And just to go elaborate further on that, I think empathy doesn't necessarily mean just being nice for the sake of nice or caring for the sake of caring. There's a lot of implications of only servicing the individual's feelings in the moment. There's lessons that need to be learned. There's a lot of growth that's ahead for various folks at different stages. And being holistically empathetic, I think, is really important to the individual and where they're at and where they aspire to be and how you can help them there. So I think that's one thing that that I've always appreciated in leaders that I've worked with that I respect and I really try to emphasize. Growth is the other one that comes to mind. I think, and this is just the way my head works, and I always, for myself, like to think through what's next. How do I continue to do things better? I tend to be fairly critical myself in ways that sometimes I think I should be probably a little bit nicer to myself about it, but ultimately I'm just trying to get better. And I think a lot of the people that I've worked with at New Engen and in past roles, wherever they may be. So just I have large ambitions. I don't expect everyone to have the exact same ones or in the same variant or same degree. So understanding where they want to grow to and how to help them do that is really important for me and feeling like a fulfilled relationship with my employees.
Yeah, I love that. So you're saying like being empathetic, having like a growth mindset kind of thing, and also being like of service, like a servant leader to the rest of your team. I like those.
Yeah,
those
absolutely. Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap here with some of your company values. So I read about them: curiosity, growth mindset, mastery. That one's like pressure cooker. Maybe that's the self-critical part. I'm like, mastery. I'm always at like 80%. Spirit of service. I love. Passion and perseverance, and be you. The be you is like amazing too, because especially in the last couple of years, as people are really much more focused on like the whole employee and how do I, it's not always just like give them a 10K bump. It's like, how do I make sure that they're engaged and that they're getting their needs met for their career? I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. How was that process of coming up? We're going to get into it with New Engen, but like, are these ever changing? Are these ones that you set from the beginning when you started the company in 2016?
Yeah. So I have a practice of revisiting the values every single year. So even if there's nothing pulling me to do so, at the end of the year, I check myself and make sure we with the executive team review those and say, where do we want to be a year from now, 5 years from now? And we call that a vision exercise. Are these the values that actually get us there? Or is there something else that we need to consider? So we actually didn't change it this year. We felt they were still relevant for 2022. Yeah. But we do sometimes fine tune it, every now and then. And so they certainly weren't the values we had at the start of the company or even year 2, year 3 of the business. Yeah. Something that we stepped back and really put in place roughly 18, 20 months ago or so. Interesting.
I had this like artist come in and make all these cool pieces of art, each with a different value on them. And so I'm like, I already had the artwork made. I've literally like not changed our values. And I think it's a really important exercise. And thank you for the reminder. I actually think it's important because we're obsessed with service. We try to be obsessed with service. And that's not even in our values. I'm like, that's actually a really good one. So you started talking about being self-critical. sometimes this stuff is like, I told you, my grandpa's a big influence on me, and like, he was critical, ironically, like ironically, it's the people who can be the most influential in a positive way are ones who actually like are direct with you and maybe get you to be better by being critical. What was your family like growing up? You grew up in Seattle.
Yeah. So, my parents are both from Japan. They met in Seattle. So they came to Seattle in their late 20s. And actually, my mom had me late, so she was 39 when she had me. So, which is back then, definitely on the later side. Nowadays, that's not as abnormal. But so met in the late 20s from Japan. And they actually met in a restaurant called Maneki, which is in the International District.
Wait, in Maneki? That's like our favorite restaurant. My husband takes pride in having like the cell phone text. We text the owner. We're like, we're coming. We love Maneki. They met at Maneki?
Yeah, so my mom worked there. My mom was a waitress there.
I love Maneki.
My dad, he was transplanted or brought over from a Japanese company that had an office here in Seattle. And he was just doing the expat life sort of, and he's the unfiltered versions. He'd get drunk there all the time, so you go there karaoke, you get drink almost every night. Not good, but met my mother there, and then I called 10 years later I was born.
Wow. Are you an only child, or you have siblings?
No, I've got an older sister who is about 18 months older than me. And then I was born right after that.
Nice. Obviously, you went to great schools, Whitman, you went to Lakeside. Who kind of told you that, education was important? Was that a value, or you were just smart?
I really don't think of myself as smart, and like, I'm sure people say that and try to be humble. Like, I legitimately don't think I'm smarter than the average person out there. As far as like education importance, my parents, both really, put a lot of value in that. And so wanted me to go to Lakeside, all those things. But you asked a question around like self-criticalness and whatnot. I think I get a lot of that from my mom. So my mother was always pushing me to kind of think about how I can be a better version of myself. And I think there's pros and cons to that approach. My father, on the other hand, his motto was, be at average or just below average. And that's great. Like, he'd always say that to me.
I love your dad. I'm like, I feel so safe with him right now. I'm like, oh, we could just be average.
He's very chill. So they got divorced, as probably
That's so funny when you were saying, oh, and then you drink it. I'm like, are they still married? How's that going?
Very different personalities. I don't even know how they got married. Frankly, they are night and day difference. My dad's lives in Hawaii now. He's happy-go-lucky, very relaxed. My mom's a little bit more strung up. And I think I've gotten like a weird mixture of both, depending on like the work and the situation I'm in and all that. But yeah, so I think the self-criticalness definitely comes from the mom side. But yeah, in terms of the importance of education, I think they both always kind of saw value in that. My mom definitely much more so, and kind of pushing me to get better. But I didn't have good grades or anything necessarily. I actually got, so I entered Lakeside in 7th grade. And it was a shocking, jarring experience for me, because I went from like elementary school where, it felt like more about the socializing experience as opposed to the actual work. At least that's how it was for me. And then went to Lakeside, and then it was like regimented classes, and like everyone felt a little more like high strung and dialed in than I was used to. And I actually got academic probation that year. I got like a D in a couple classes, and they put me on notice. And so I had to go through 8th grade on academic probation and try to, work my way out of it. But I was always an okay student, but not, I was never like a failing student, but I wasn't, I was by no means like killing it.
What were you into besides school? Like, were you into music, into sports?
Yeah, so I played tennis, and so you mentioned perhaps even before we just got on briefly about kind of motivations and people that influencers in my life that kind of impacted my mindset, and so I got into tennis at 12 years old, and I got really lucky. So I had there's a tennis club nearby that was willing to let me teach like little kids. I started off teaching like 3 to 5 year olds, and then eventually 10, 12 high schoolers as well as time passed by, and then trade that in for actual group classes at the place called still these called Central Park Tennis Club in Kirkland, Washington.
Okay.
And
under Doug? Was Doug Doug? I can't remember his last name, but Doug was. So we never discussed. Did you know that I played tennis at UW?
I did not know that.
How did we never?
So you're actually good. You're legitimate.
No, you too. I mean, seriously, I used to teach also. Like, we should go hit balls. Although I'm slow.
You'd probably kick my ass.
No, I can't play anymore. That's why this is perfect.
Yeah.
This is perfect. Just somebody who can return the ball and like we can laugh and then go see Dave at his bar and go grab a beer.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I didn't realize that about you.
So that ecosystem actually, I think, taught me a lot of lessons. So like you gotta, like I put in time, I get to class, and then I ended up playing like 5-6 days a week as a result of that. And so that was like my extracurricular activity. There's a coach there named Lisa Muldrum.
Oh, so she was my coach at UW.
She was, yeah. Okay,
yes.
So yeah, she went to UW.
I think I just connected with her on LinkedIn. That's so funny.
Yeah. And so Lisa was, I think, definitely, and there's a couple like Clay Runnels is another person there.
Awesome.
Bill Ansdell, just like massive impact on my life, I would say, in the sense that it gave me confidence because, with the divorce, my parents got divorced at basically just before I turned 13, so 12 years old. And so at Lakeside, like obviously, great school, but I wasn't doing well relative. I was, about to get kicked out.
That's a lot happening all at once. Your parents divorced, new school, lots of rigor, multiple homes. That's hard.
Exactly. And then, my dad's job actually, so he tried to start his own company. It didn't go well. It failed. And so then like he was in a financially constrained position. So both my parents were working. My mom was working 2 jobs at the time, H&R Block and a restaurant job. And then I was like, back then Lakeside had a limited financial aid program, and I was one of a few that were on there. So I just felt this like wealth disparity as well from my peers that also just didn't, you don't process it well at 12 years old, 13 years old when you're going through puberty and all the things. So
yeah, that's tough. That's
so
tough.
And so like Central Park Tennis Club really just like was the place where I started to build confidence as a human being, because I didn't feel like I actually had an ability to do that. And helping me improve my game and play tournaments. And so I wasn't a D1 player, I was a D3 player, so not as good as you.
So Whitman, I didn't realize Whitman's such a good school. I think that's Jonathan Sposato went there. He's been on the podcast. And he is like really into Whitman. Like he's now super involved. I think he's on the board. And I know it's a phenomenal school, super hard to get into. So is that where you played at Whitman?
That's where I played. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's very cool. Do you still play?
I have not played in 4 years. So
well, you've been building a business, having a baby.
And even the time before that was like 2 years ago.
So it keeps coming up on the podcast because I think a lot of people love tennis, but I'm really obsessed right now with pickleball. And I really want to get like more into it. So if you ever want to play, I'm just trying to
I would love to play. I like that seems more my speed. It's not as
it's more fun.
Yeah, exactly. It seems a little more lighthearted. Easier.
Well, especially if you've been good at something and then you're going to get out and just suck. It's the worst feeling in the world. You're like, I don't need that. I get like beat up at work. Like, I just want to hug and like laugh and totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. So was Whitman the right choice for you? Is that, was that a great college experience or kind of, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. It was another kind of experience, transformative experience, I would say, where I built really great friendships, continue to, I think, further, for me, like confidence, I think is a really important thing in your belief in yourself and helping you understand what your ceiling could be. And that my 4 years at Whitman helped kind of me understand what I could be truly capable of. I remember, even before going into Whitman or even like midway through, and this kind of goes into like the first job offer I got, as I was looking for my first job out of school, I was really hoping for something that would, at least be a salaried position where I didn't have to work at like a McDonald's or and this is kind of the fear mindset I came up with or grew up with. Really was just worried about like what my future could look like. And just Whitman gave me a lot of connections, a lot of confidence, just let me explore other extracurricular activities that I don't think I would have at potentially a bigger school. And so for me, it was perfect just in the stage of life that I was in. And
what did you study there?
I studied Asian studies, which is like an interdisciplinary history, politics, language, kind of interdisciplinary major. I was it was deciding to do sociology and Asian studies. So I was kind of much more on thinking about even like nonprofit type work or government type work, not necessarily business when I was going through school. I started off just like a lot of people thinking I had to go through pre-med, pre-dental, something to that extent. And then a year and a half in, realized I was not at all interested in the courses and the classwork and decided to go.
Interesting take on like how you're talking about your dad, like starting and struggling with businesses and being an entrepreneur, that sometimes that turns people off completely from the idea of ever starting their own company. I'm excited to hear about like this theme of confidence, like how you ultimately decided to start New Engen. But I think when I met you, you were at Boeing. Was that the job? That was the first job out of Whitman?
That was no, the first job out of Whitman was a county government job in development. But I got the first job offer I got was from Boeing. Is 2009 is when I graduated. And, basically they announced 10,000 layoffs the month before I graduated or 2 months before. And then they cut my job offer right as I was about to graduate.
Yeah, so that's a tough year to graduate.
Yeah, it was not fun. So took the first job, which was an economic development opportunity, which was great. Actually, I'm no regrets about that either, and had a lot of great mentors in that experience. And then Boeing came back and reached out about the offer that they rescinded and offered it back. And so then to Boeing.
And the Boeing was like a program, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about the program that you were in at Boeing?
Yeah. It was called the Business Career Foundation Program, BCFP, I think is the acronym. And basically it's a 2-year rotation program where you rotate through business, finance, marketing, sales type functions. And it's 2 years or 6 stints, 4 months each, 2 years. And you just get to see a lot of different parts of the company and how things work. And then after the 2-year program, you jump into one of those functions, generally speaking, although there's some exceptions there.
I mean, I'm also a Seattle person, that, as you know, and I don't think I ever would have thought about going that route. But now with some perspective, I'm like, that seems like a hands-on MBA, like the best job you could ever have. I just didn't even know it existed. Like, how did you know about that job?
Yeah,
Did they recruit out of Whitman? Is that the deal?
They did not. No, there was an alum that had, and I don't know how she got involved in the program, but she was 1 year ahead of me, and I think interned at Boeing, and then they naturally funnel or source from interns to that program, and so she went through an internship and then got recruited into that program. But yeah, they don't directly recruit through Whitman, but she was kind enough to send a note to our career center and just say, hey, this is interested. I can try to get your resume better visibility than the automated screening system that Boeing uses. So got really lucky that path was already there, but
and so a lot of people apply to the program, and then of the people that work in that program, how many continue on, or is it thought to be kind of like a rotational kind of off ramping, I guess, to other companies?
Yeah, they definitely want it to be a leadership development program for Boeing. I don't think in practice it has. I think it's been hard for Boeing the last few years for sure, with everything that's happened on the 87 program and 37 as well. But even back then when I was there 10 years ago, I think this was when Amazon was starting to like really, obviously it's been dominant for a long time, but it's continued to be dominant in the city. There was Microsoft that's doing exceptionally well, Expedia. And so I think it was just a challenging environment that, wasn't perhaps playing out as ideally as they would hope. But yeah, the intent is for it to source into future Boeing positions and lock them in for the long run.
And what did you learn about yourself through the rotation as far as what are your ninja skills? Like, this is where I'm meant to thrive. So are you sales? Are you marketing? Like, what would your role be in a company if you're not running it as the CEO?
Yeah. So, that's great. That's an interesting question. When I think about the Boeing experience, I struggle with that question because I actually learned more about what I don't like than what I think I'm.
That's equally as valuable, if not more.
Which was really helpful. So being a Seattle person, I always looked up to Boeing a ton, especially in the 80s, 90s. Like that was an iconic company, and it was headquartered here back in the day instead of Chicago. And so really looked up to the business and wanted to work there, and it's global and all this cool, sexy stuff that I thought was cool. And then going there, and no shot at Boeing, I think Boeing's a really important company in the world. But it moves at a pace that I found frustrating, and I'm actually glad it moves at that pace, because we're building airplanes that that put people's lives at
exactly.
risk.
You're like, can you please take a little minute and slow down?
Yeah. So it's good. Like, please continue to take the time and diligence and have the checks and balances. But as far as, but it does, prohibit speed of decision, agility in a lot of areas that I felt didn't necessarily need to operate that way. And so, so I went through six different rotations, and even spent some time in South Korea, Washington, DC, and then in the Seattle area. And everything from factory operations to marketing, sales, accounting. And I just didn't like any of it, actually, was where I kind of landed on it. So that was when I was very actively looking for just something different and maybe something smaller. And that's when a friend of mine, who I think was in talks with you, Shauna, about that Zulily role, wasn't looking, but then I was looking at the email threads the other day.
Was it Cameron?
His name was Evan Purcell.
Evan. Yes. Where's he these? Yeah.
He's now at Airtable. But he was, I think, back then at Google.
Good job for looking it up, because I don't think I would have remembered. I just know that you made me look really good at Zulily, because that was a really hard client. It was hard to get hired. They had you take that test.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was like a really good weeding out process. I never even, you crushed the test, and then you got in there and crushed your job. Right. And so how was it different for you? Like, how was that like a big kind of culture shock, like such a different company?
Yeah,
than
for
Boeing?
Sure. It was a massive culture shock. It was, going from, I think at the time Boeing was, I could be off, but like high tens of thousands, maybe even close to 100,000 employees. And then going to Zulily, which in 2012, at the time that I joined, was probably 300 employees or so. It's just a massive difference. And then the speed and agility of decisions, kind of going back to that point, much faster. The access to data, the ability to use data to make great decisions. The skill set that they possessed was like mind blowing to me. And so, and that culture shock hit when I first did the interviews, when I met with Dave Atchison, and I think I interviewed with a guy named Kieran Akineni, who's now the CMO of Zulily, who I really respect as well, and a few others. But just they were objective, they were analytical, data driven, and they were fast to make informed decisions. And those decisions, you saw the impact quickly, especially in the e-commerce context, where you've got millions of customers and you make a change and you see purchase behavior change, just as a result of that change. It was just so different. So
Well, Dave always impressed me, because he was always so thoughtful and so thorough with the interviews. Some are like, no, pass, or on to the next. And he was so clear in what he was looking for. And so it's like, I know it when I'll know it when I see it. And you guys must have formed an incredible relationship and just worked beautifully together, because you ended up starting New Engen together. How did that whole idea come to be, and what problem, I guess, at the time were you trying to solve? Like, why was it worth leaving Zulily to go start New Engen?
Fair question. So one, we left Zulily. We didn't leave Zulily to start New Engen. And so I think Dave, he had gone 5+ years at Zulily. He was literally, I think, employee number 4. And so, he'd gone through a lot of growth, a lot of success, IPO, and then an acquisition from QVC. And so I think he kind of left to take a break and, collect his thoughts, and, I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think he would say some version of that, and just figure out what's next and take some time off. And then Jean-Guy, our other co-founder, he was an engineer. I think he also similarly, I think, left for, similar reasons. He was an early engineer at Zulily, I think in 2011. So that was year 1 or year 2 of the business. And he always has liked the smaller environment. And so he's actually left New Engen for the same reason. Good friend of mine, so very amicable.
Yeah, I actually looked on his LinkedIn to be like, where is this guy now?
Yeah.
And I think it says like indefinite, like retirement or something. Like he's like, he's having a break.
Yeah, he's and that's very Jean-Guy, if you know him. He's just he just he liked the early stage.
So I don't think I remembered I just remember all of a sudden being like, oh, Dave's got a company and Justin's there, and I don't think I remembered the like birthing story. So this is interesting to me.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely can jump into that. So basically, I left thinking I wanted to do a earlier stage company. So basically, through my journey, almost 4 years at Zulily, I took a step back, said, what did I like about it the most? And it was really in the early stage where, again, agility, decisioning, progress, visible progress on the day to day. And so I was looking at a lot of early stage startups. So I was interviewing with companies like Revolve Clothing, Dolly, which is in the Seattle area, with Mike Howell.
I love Mike. Mike was just on the podcast. Love him.
Yeah. Remitly is another company I interviewed at. So a bunch in the area, and then a bunch in San Francisco, LA, New York. And then there was just a very clear common theme from that, which was they were all looking for data-driven, kind of growth, accountable marketing people. That was just the trend I saw. Dave similarly had a from a very different standpoint, because he was more advising companies, investing in companies, saw a very similar trend. We started talking in February 2016 about loose ideas, and also thinking about our Zulily experience and what could we have done that could have made it even better than what we had what happened over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think there are things that we were wrong about when we were thinking about the business, and some things that absolutely still hold true. And so ultimately the mission or the objective of the business, which is to help other companies grow in measurable, accountable ways and being best in class at that hasn't changed. The how in which we do that has transformed quite a bit. And so when we first started the business, we thought it had to be a software solution, a technology solution. And so, we were thinking about our Zulily experience and saying, well, we were just starting to invest in advertising, technology solutions, and building our own homegrown solutions. And if we had done that earlier and quicker, maybe that could have been even better for the company. And maybe that's what we need for all other to bring to market to all other businesses. So hence the onboarding of Jean-Guy as well, our first lead engineer and co-founder, and raised capital with Trinity Ventures and August Capital under a B2B SaaS MarTech ad tech solution kind of company thesis. Did a Series A as well with that. And so, so that was the original kind of how in which we thought that had to be accomplished. What we found out, every single year and kind of in more and more pronounced ways was that the services side, especially in marketing and digital, was in high demand and continue to be in high demand, and where we're seeing the majority of the growth. And so that's like the very quick version, which I can go in more deeper detail, but yeah, also how we started the business and how we made that transition.
And how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, there's a embarrassing email thread between myself and Dave and Jean-Guy on this, where we were spitballing ideas, all of which were terrible. But we basically went with Dave's, and Dave's, Dave was trying to think, wanted the sounds and the components of the name to have a meaning behind it, as opposed to just something that sounds like whatever. Mm-hmm. And so new was to kind of signify the new customer acquisition part of what we do. So we're going to help businesses acquire new customers well, so new, and then also a new business, kind of like a dual word there. And then Engen, it sounds like an engine, and we thought we were building a technology solution that would scalably do this, and so that was part of it. The GEN was generating new customers, generating growth, generating revenue, et cetera. And so that's how we got to new Engen.
Yeah. Well, Gen is in like almost all of our marketing jobs that we get in now. They're like demand gen.
Yes,
like,
demand gen. Yeah.
Everything is like Gen. Yeah. I love the name. And so, so the three of you say, okay, we're going to do this thing. And how do you decide who's in what role? Or was it like kind of organic over time where you kind of fell into your lanes? Or did you decide before you started?
Yeah, so we actually spent 6 months working on the business before we decided to incorporate it and raise funds. So, Dave and I started talking in February. March, April, got Jean-Guy on board. And what we decided was we were going to build an early prototype software solution and see, could it, let's offer for free, and could it do better, do a better job growing new customers, revenue, sales for the clients we work with than what they're doing today. And so, so we basically spent, the kind of call it 4 to 6 months onboarding clients for free. So one of our first clients was a company called Thrive Cosmetics.
I love Thrive. Oh my gosh. I use their mascara. I use their shadow, their lip gloss. I used a lot of Thrive.
Yeah. And so they moved to LA now, but they were a 3-person company at the time in Lower Queen Anne in a small office there. Dolls Kill was another early client before we incorporated the business. I believe Dolly was as well. Tavour is another one. I don't know if you're familiar with that company in Seattle.
What's it called?
Tavour, Tabour. They're a beer. They used to be a beer subscription craft
interesting.
Beer company. They're based in Soto. They've been around for several years, I think now.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically built that early prototype, saw that it actually drove better performance than these agencies that they were using. And so, gave us the confidence to say, yeah, I think this is a real opportunity. Ultimately, what my role at the time was like developing the product, the specs behind the product, Jean-Guy actually coding the product, and then I was servicing the clients on the day-to-day. And so I had much more of an operator kind of client services focus early on, and Dave was the CEO of the business. And also he had a lot of great connections with obviously Daryl and Mark from Zulily, who were board members as well as investors early on, Trinity August. And so that's kind of how we naturally just slipped into our role. So I was originally the president of the company, Dave was the CEO, and Jean-Guy was chief engineer.
Yeah. Interesting. So I have about 20 questions going through my brain really fast right now, but I don't want to forget what I was going to ask, which is, I guess, like what size, those are smaller companies. Is there a minimum size company? I think I asked Dave this at some point because I was like, I need help. And I think I was like too small, or that it was like too expensive or something. Like what's the business model as far as how you guys make money, and how do you differ from other marketing, enabled companies?
Yeah, for sure. So now, I kind of have talked a lot about the early stage. If I were to fast forward now 5.5 years, we identify and our positioning is a growth marketing, digital marketing agency. So we're here to be your digital agency of record, which includes iterative performance creative, which includes influencers, which is a company we just merged with in Arkansas that has an influencer service around it. And then we've got media, performance marketing, performance media as well to kind of wrap it all together to enable growth for the brands that we work with. So marketing agencies is kind of the simple labeling. As far as the types of companies we work with today, it's actually now much more in the enterprise or high growth side. So like the companies like ViacomCBS, the Home Depot, Patagonia, 1-800-Flowers.com, Rothy's, Figs down in LA. Just those companies that are either pre-IPO and growing rapidly and disrupting their space, or these big titan businesses like eBay and Home Depot, as I mentioned, that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on digital and looking to do that in a more innovative or drive continued performance on top of their historical efforts.
And so the business model is like, how do you make money, and how do your clients measure success? Because I find marketing to be, we just started spending money on marketing. It's so hard to measure the ROI.
Yeah. So we are, pretty classic professional services model. The way we charge is we've got monthly retainers, and then we've got variable fees on top depending on the budget. So for example, especially like a company like 1-800-Flowers.com, and it's February 15th today. And so Valentine's Day is a very large volume and high stress time, frankly. And so we staff extra people during these kind of peak moments. Mother's Day will be the next one. And so we have our fees basically increase during these kind of ebbs and flows of budget. Q4, another time where things get more intense and high touch. And so, it's professional services staffing. And we try to put together an SOW pricing structure that pays for the cost of servicing the business to where they want to go in their next stage of growth. Yes, another question that I just blanked out on.
Well, I was going to ask how they measure your success. Like what type of data do you provide them to say, hey, this is actually working? Yeah.
So in 95% of the cases, it's about new customer growth, revenue growth, profitably. That's what we're accountable for. And so if it's and as a result of that, I think one thing to note, every company is a little bit different, right? There's B2B, which could take a really long time for deals to close, especially in the enterprise side. And then there's B2C, which is, if you're selling a pair of pants, that consideration cycle isn't quite as long. And so, and therefore it's much more easier to measure the actual impact of marketing efforts and digital advertising efforts. So as a result of that, the space that we play in tends to be heavily towards business to consumer type models, e-commerce, retail, some fintech, but very much on that side of things, as opposed to long lead cycle, where there's a lot of other factors that potentially influence that purchase decision.
Interesting. And so if you're me and I'm running a enterprise company and I'm interviewing you and whoever else you come up against as competitors, what types of questions would you encourage if you were consulting me to ask to kind of weed out someone who's going to waste my time or my money?
Yeah. So you're talking about specifically for marketing services and growth.
Yeah.
services.
Like if I'm interviewing you and your 5 competitors, you know, I would be able to tell a friend like, hey, here's what you need to ask this recruiting firm.
Yeah.
And this is what you need to look out for. And this is how you should measure their success. These are the data points that you should be looking at. Yeah. So I'm curious, like how to be a good interviewer of your services.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's really hard for one. That's kind of one thing I would say, because there's so many providers in the space, and so it's crowded. There's a lot of people that spend a lot of time and energy into marketing and sales collateral and coming off very polished and saying all the right things, but that doesn't necessarily represent the quality of the services that is provided. And so, I'd say like even the interview themselves or the questions you could ask themselves are not necessarily going to translate to value. And so putting it differently, I've seen great marketers or great agencies out there that are just not great at sales. I was talking to the CEO of an agency literally last week. He said he's really talented, really technical, really strong marketer, but he was like, I'm a terrible CEO and I'm a terrible salesperson, and so it's frustrating.
Tough. Yeah,
to be in the space that I'm in. On the other hand, there's plenty of examples, and this is where we net out positive, where companies get enamored by the sales pitch and the process, and then the actual and the founder or the sales team is exceptional at that, but then the actual people delivering the services is a different team. And it feels almost like a bait and switch. And so I would actually, especially in professional services in this type of arena, I lean heavily on referrals and reference calls and talking with other people that have worked with that firm, especially if it's a contract you're locking into that's 6 months, 12 months, et cetera, which a lot of firms nowadays do that. And so we do as well. So I think that's the kind of best barometer versus anything that any salesperson could say to you.
Yeah, I think that's super, super good advice. And so as you've scaled the business, now how many employees do you have? And then you did this acquisition. I'm curious about how you're feeling about the culture that you've created.
Yeah. So we're all together about 230 people and growing and looking to hire if anyone's looking for marketing or jobs. We have a lot of roles open right now. So we, as you noted, we just brought on Acorn Influence, which is a company in Rogers, Arkansas, in the Bentonville, Fayetteville region, focused on influencer marketing services. And so they're about 45, 50 people in that group alone. As far as the culture, I think it's been an interesting 2 years, but I do feel like we're in the strongest place we've ever been. And so I think that's the kind of overall sentiment. As far as the way it looks is very different than I would have thought when we first started the company, or even 3 years ago. We've hired a lot in the last 2 years, and so even I don't know the exact percentages, but call it 40+% have probably never met more than one person.
Isn't that crazy? We've hired a lot too, and I know you've got I don't know if this is still true, but I read Seattle, San Francisco, New York, Dallas, and Charlotte. I'm super curious if are you still using those offices? Like, how are people gonna meet each other?
Yeah. So we have Seattle, New York, Charlotte now. So we've closed a few just because no one was going into it, and those leases came up, and we just decided it wasn't worth keeping that open just because the uptake was low. And we're in 30 different states now. So we have very much embraced a remote first culture. We have a lot of energy and kind of documentation around how we want the virtual culture to look, and not even if you are in an office together, put your Zoom on and in the same room with someone else and look in the camera and don't exclude people that don't have the benefit of being in the same region. So it just looks very different. Whereas pre-pandemic, it was really about the in-office culture and the connectivity and the conversation.
Totally.
Are cooler, and we prided ourselves in that, and we've had to really change the mindset and be intentional about how we conduct meetings, how we work with each other, how we Slack, or having respect for people's time zones and not pinging someone at 7 o'clock just because it's 4 o'clock your time. They're probably doing other things, and so there's a lot of intentionality that's required to kind of get there. But really important for us to keep scaling in this stage that we're in.
Yeah.
And we're 30 states, so there's no turning back at this
There's
point.
no turning back. A lot of companies are still saying they're like in person ideally, but we've hired in like you're saying 30 different states. I'm like, and what's your plan B? Like there is no, right. It's kind of like it's left, the train has left the building. It's still going. And so what about, how has that helped with or impacted your ability to hire, more diversity? And then of course the challenge around inclusivity of that diversity, like you were talking about.
Yeah, I think, if anything, I think it's helped to be in a meaningful way to be open to all markets. I think historically we used to hire mostly in Seattle, which isn't that diverse, I think. And
it's not.
Yeah. And obviously you can define that a million different ways. And so I'm kind of thinking about it from a racial lens, but obviously there's a bunch of other kind of elements there. But not a terribly diverse market. And so I think we've gotten a lot more, an injection of a lot of different and valuable perspectives from a lot of different socioeconomic statuses, racial, ethnic backgrounds, even a lot of discussion around silent disabilities and other dimensions that aren't so visible to the day-to-day. And how do we be cognizant of that and ensure that everybody in the company is getting, their fair shake of being successful at the business. And so, I think overall it's been that's kind of accelerated years for us as a company and by having this remote element. But the other dynamic I think is also the ability to kind of really recognize that, we didn't go too much into the history of the company, but we used to have this tech component and this services component, as I mentioned. And as we've embraced that we are a services business, professional services business, I think what makes it really clear, at least I full-heartedly believe, is like it's about the people. Like literally 90+% of the cost of the business is human capital. It's people. The people are what drives us. There's nothing else.
The people drive, and if they're engaged, then they're going to be better to the customers, and the customers are going to be more loyal, more engaged. It's a whole cycle. Yeah.
And I know you run one too, so I think that's obvious from your perspective. But it's frankly like we were thinking about engineers and technology product and like trying to kind of manage both. And as we've indexed heavily towards a people-based business, it's opened our mind and perspectives to all the things we can and should be doing. And so we have a monthly D&I curriculum that we go through with the entire company, where we spend probably about 30 minutes of the all hands with brown bag sessions underneath that go through a specific topic, whether it's microaggressions or unconscious bias or what have you. And that's every single month to educate and help the rest of the staff get educated and just aware of the advantages and disadvantages that various people across
that falls in your growth mindset and just makes you smarter. I love that. I would love if you send me, I don't know if you've got someone facilitating it or if you've just like outsourced a company. We were putting a ton of energy and time into it in 2020 and like the first half of 2021. And then frankly, just got like ridiculously busy. But it's still, our field has gotten like, it's like drinking from the fire hose right now. It's a little bit crazy, but it's important. And I think it's up to you and up to me as the CEOs to like continue to lead into, being better and constantly growing. I think that's great. And what about for you personally? Like how has this been for you? You became CEO in a global pandemic. You had a baby in a global pandemic. It's been a big couple of years of change. How has it been what you expected, and how has it been different? Yeah, it's
I think I don't know if I had any expectations, and so it's hard to say what the difference is versus the expectations. I think it's also no one could have predicted the last 2 years and how that would play out for people's mental well-being and employee dynamics and the Great Resignation that's also happened over the last 9 months or so. I don't think I think in short, definitely different from anything I possibly had in mind of what being a CEO could look like. But overall, I feel extremely fulfilled and fortunate. I think that's the headline, and specifically get to work with amazing people. And I really truly mean that. I love, like when I wake up and I get to go to meetings, and I'm like legitimately jazzed about getting to talk to people, solve problems with the folks. And so really fulfilled and really happy. And then to have a daughter that is healthy and a family that's healthy through the last 2 years. I feel just super lucky to be in the position that I'm in, just like extremely privileged and lucky. So couldn't be.
I could have said you were going to be a CEO when I met you. I was like, this guy is like, I think of you as being a unicorn because you're super smart, you're engaging, and you like, I know it sounds weird, but like being that, I know you don't think you're smart, whenever you said that, but I think you're smart. Obviously, Zulily thought you were smart. You passed the test that nobody else passed. I'm kidding. And then, your team around you recognized you as an outlier. And I think it's great that you're just continuing to push the envelope and pushing yourself, not just to be like, oh, I'm in this role, but I'm going to be the best at it. And continually, the self-critical thing, I think, actually comes in slightly handy, even though,
it has a purpose.
It has a purpose.
Yeah.
It can be painful, but I think it's got a purpose. How, I guess what's my question here? Like, who do you turn to when you need comfort or advice around the business? Not like comfort, like, pillow talk comfort, but like business comfort. Like, am I making the right decision?
Yeah.
Do I have the right board and the right people around me?
Yeah. So there's the number one person I talk to the most about that is our president of the company, John White. He actually is also from Zulily. I worked with him for the first time. Maybe had a couple of meetings when he was the director of accounting at Zulily, and he played a pretty instrumental role in taking them public. So he was brought on board to help us enable the IPO from a finance perspective. Then got to know him at Zulily when he took an interim role as director of retention marketing at Zulily, and then also was Daryl Cavins, who's the founder, ex-CEO of Zulily's chief of staff, business manager. So got to work with him. He and I clicked right out the gate, and just how we work together. He then went to Tableau for 2 years. We brought him back from Tableau to New Engen. He was running ops, and then he ran sales, and then he ran finance and sales and ops, and continued to kind of take bigger and bigger roles and successfully. And now he's our president. But good friend, and just he knows my weaknesses and gaps and blind spots very well too. And just continues to be, he just provides a really great sounding board that can cut through a lot of noise. And so, I would have to say him first and foremost.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. And so what are you thinking about as far as the 3 to 5 year, like long-term plans? I know it's hard in a services business. I get asked all the time, like, what's your plan? What's your exit strategy? I'm like, it's not this, it's a little different.
Yeah, it is different. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think over the next 3 to 5 year horizon, we're focused on, I think about it from like a business standpoint. What does the business need to look like? What does the goalpost look like for that time horizon? And I think, I'm hoping in 3 to 5 years, for one, we are the leader in, and I call it accountable growth services, but call it performance marketing, performance digital services, i.e. helping companies be or giving the companies the best shot at growing their digital growth, in the country of the United States of America or North America, kind of that's the general sentiment there. And also starting to be an emerging player on the global scale. And so we have a UK entity that we started pre-pandemic that we want to revisit and think about UK EMEA, and expanding more aggressively in that region and potentially other regions as well. So I think a lot of that requires us to expand our capability set. So we're looking at, I talked about this acquisition we made on the influencer space. We're also looking at other kind of service lines or areas that we may be early on or don't have altogether that we think would be relevant to the future of growth services for brands and businesses, and how do we kind of bring that on or home grow that in a really rapid way. But ultimately, I think that means a lot of expansion of capabilities, geographic footprint, and a lot of really good execution to get there.
That's exciting. And are you being asked a lot, like, what's your actual strength? Like for us, so we do marketing, recruiting, and product, HR, admin, sales. We do a lot. Like, but what are you really actually good at? And I'm trying to be like, actually, we have people who run each of these businesses. So it's like, think of Fuel as like a holding company. I'm thinking of New Engen the same way, like come to us, we'll provide this service. And then there's people who specialize and who can crush each aspect, the creative, media. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I get that question all the time too. So yeah.
It sucks when you're like, no, you can't actually be good. I'm like, we actually are trying to be good at all of those
exactly. Right. That's exactly right.
And the one-stop shop is like, that's kind of that's how we would sell it. It sounds like you Engen the same thing. Like, and you don't have to use you for all of it. We just want you for just one piece.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Engen.
I think it's awesome. So my final question for you is, what fuels you?
Yeah,
Do you like
that's a
that
great,
question?
yeah, I like what you did there. So this sounds cheesy, but it really is. What fuels me is the ability to truly help other people. That's like the short version of it. There's a lot underneath that I have a lot of thoughts that I could probably spend a full hour talking through. But I think of that today in a couple ways. One of which is people that choose to choose New Engen as an employer. It's really important to me that people that join the company view it as a transformative experience, one that they think is life changing, is a choice that they will always hold near and dear to their heart. And so, how do we do that? Through their career acceleration, their growth, their learning, connections, friendships they make at the organization. And so that's certainly one way. The other is, I guess, more from a classically altruistic perspective of giving back to community. And that's an area where I'm really bad at doing multiple things at once, or focusing deep on multiple things at once. Hence, like, as I've been working at New Engen, my friendships have deteriorated. As a very basic example. Just not good at wearing a lot of different hats. I know some people are exceptional at doing like 5-6 different things. I'm just not one of those people. But in the next chapter, it's really important to me that there's a lot wrong with the world. I believe there's a lot of systemic issues in America and at the global scale. And how do I really move the needle in a lot of those efforts is again, I'm speaking vague terms, but a lot I can speak to specificity, and that would take a long time. But
it goes back to your value. Passion was one of the values. So that's why you could talk about this for a long time. You're a passionate guy.
Yeah, I think so. I try to be. Yeah.
I love it. Justin, so fun. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, you too, Sean. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate your time as well. And so good to connect with you.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.